Hi. We're going to quickly look at rendering out reference footage from After Effects so that we can bring it into Maya to place it as a texture on a plane so that we can have in-app referencing for when we start to do our animation. So first things first, I've gotten through and gotten myself a bunch of reference. So I took about 10 to 12 clips of reference for the scene that I'm doing. And then what I've done is I've pulled that reference into here. And I've taken that reference from here and dragged it down to here. That's automatically created a composition for me. In the composition settings, the only thing that's super important for us at the moment is that we then make sure that we go back to the frame rate and we set the frame rate to 24 frames per second. The reason this is important is we want to make sure that we're matching, well, we're converting these from whatever random frame rate they come at from your phone or from whatever device you use to capture it, and that we are essentially going to convert it to 24 frames per second. So when we take it into Maya, it will be at 24 frames per second as well, and it should line up with our audio. Okay, so once we've done that, you'd press OK, and then you proceed to edit your reference together. Now, in this particular case, I've taken all of these references, I've brought them down here, and then essentially I've gone through the 10 references that I collected, and I've picked, mixed and matched the best scenes, the best choreographed moves together to create one new piece that was made out of all of them. Now, this takes a little bit of time to sort of get right, but if you want to make sure that you're sort of maximizing the quality that you can achieve, this is a great way to do that. Okay, so once we're happy with our edit and we're happy with how the ref is looking and we're happy with the cut, we can then take this and we can then export it out. So once you're ready, you can come to composition. We can go add a render queue. I'm not going to do that. I've already done this. It'll come over to the render queue and it'll be dropped in here. And then from here, actually, I will just quickly make a new composition. Bear with me 1 second. Come to reference, composition, add to render queue. Now, I'm not going to actually go through with this. I've already saved mine out, but there's a few settings that are important to note here. Under best settings, we can leave all of this alone. The one thing that you do really want to check is to make sure that we're using the comps frame rate or the compositions frame rate, which is this here, which is the 24 frames per second. Again, we want to make sure that we're converting the footage, whatever it came in at, into 24 frames per second. So this is how we do that. So we can go OK on that. In terms of high quality, we're going to be setting this to JPEG. Under format options, we can set this up to 10, and then the rest of this can mostly stay the same. Just here where it says use comp frame number, we're going to click off on that, and we're going to make sure that this stays at 0. This will just ensure that your frame exports will export from frame 0 instead of from wherever your scene starts. If your scene is like starting from frame 5, the frame count will start from frame 5 and Maya will have a hissy fit. So we just want to make sure that we tick that off, set this to 0, and then we can press OK. Once we've done that, the last thing that we have to do is where it says output, we want to click on the output. And in here, if you've done this in a default scene, your default scene will probably look something like this, where you have the name that you've chosen and an underscore and then a whole bunch of hashes within a pair of brackets. This is perfectly fine. However, we do want to delete all the hashes bar 1. We just want a single hash, and that's going to denote to the render that it doesn't want any frame padding, which will just make it so that frame 0 is frame 0 and frame 1 is frame 1, and so on and so forth. If you have extra hashes, it will start adding zeros to the frame count, and we don't want that. So we're going to leave it as so, and then you choose where you want it to go. In this case, I've already rendered these out, and then you would press save. I'm not going to do that here, but that's how you do it. From there, you can press the render button, and it will render those out to the location that you chose. I'm going to minimize that down, and I'm going to come quickly into Maya. Okay, Now, once we're in Maya, the goal of what we're trying to achieve is essentially this, to bring in those renders as frame footage that we can use as reference. So this is assigned to just a plane, and then I've added a texture to this plane. You can also do this via image planes, and the same settings apply to the image plane as applies to the texture node that we create in the first place. So we'll go back through and we'll sort of recreate this so that we can, so you can get an idea of how we can actually connect this up. So I'm going to delete this plane for now, and we'll just start from scratch. Quickly come into here, I'll delete this, and there we go. There we go, back in a default Z. Probably should have just done that. Okay, so first things first, we're going to make a plane. So we can do that here, or you can come to Create, Polygon Primitives, Plane. Now I don't need 10 divisions on this, so I can come into the Attribute Editor and come to Polyplane 1. We can set these both down to 1. Once they're at 1, I can take this, I can rotate it 90 degrees. Actually, I want to rotate it minus 90 degrees. And then I can play around with this a little more. Now, when I rendered out my scene, I rendered it out at 2000 pixels wide by 3000 pixels tall. So I know that as long as I set this to 2 and I set this to 3, that's because the rotation on this is not correct. I'll set that around to 90 degrees. It's probably going to be upside down when I pull my pictures in. That is Murphy's Law. But I know that this is now 2 by 3, so the ratio should be the same. So no matter how much I uniformly scale this up, that ratio will stay the same, and my image will fit on here. Should fit on here perfectly. Okay, once we've got the plane, we can then come to our Hypershade, which you'll find here, or Windows, Rendering Editors, Hypershade. Once we're in the Hypershade, we can create a 2D texture. So under the Create section, under 2D Textures, we will click that, and then we'll come to File, and we can click that. Once we click that file, then I can come over to my Attribute Editor. I can click on the File folder. I can navigate to my reference. And I will pick just the first frame, frame 0 in this case. Open. That's going to open that now as a file texture. Now, I also want to then come into this tick box down here and tell it use image sequence. And what it will do now is it will search through that folder for any other sequential frames. This is one of the reasons why it's so picky when it comes to how the frame number is named. Because it's sort of automatically searches through the folder instead of letting you specify what the frames are. So again, just be aware that if it doesn't work, there's a reasonable chance that it has something to do with how your frame number is applied to the back of your file. Make sure there's no padding, make sure there's no numbers in the name of the object, and then it should work perfectly fine from there. Okay, now that we've done that, I can then select my Lambert, come to Textures, make a middle mouse drag that texture onto Color. I can close this now. Actually, no, I can't. I've got to put this on my plane. So I'm going to middle mouse drag that Lambert 1 material onto my plane, and nothing's happened. Now, the reason nothing's happened is because we have to tell it to use textures, which is this little texture button here. And it's made a fool of me. Why has it made a fool of me? Let's have a look here. It still has the AI surface shader on it, so we need to tell it to take the Lambert shader. So middle mouse dragging and dropping didn't work for some reason. Normally it does. So in that case, just select the object, and in our hyper shader, we can right click and hold on this, and we can say assign material to selection, and it should assign that material to the selection. Now we can close this out. I can come down here and set my frame count to the amount of frames I have. We can go whoop. And now in my scene, I have my scene reference of me being a weirdo. And now I can import my rig, and I'll have a perfect reference in my scene that I can reference, which will help me with my timing. It will help me with all the things. And then once I've done all my blocking, and then we can carry on with our splining. Having this in scene is invaluable. It's one of the easiest things to fail at when you're first starting animation, is to get your timing right. And having a reference like this in scene straight away will help your timing be essentially flawless. Cool. And then from here, we'll carry on animating our character. All right, thanks for watching.